Morning, everyone. Our opening hymn this morning is There is More Love Somewhere, number 95 from Singing the Living Tradition. Please sit back and enjoy listening to the hymn.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere. Somewhere.
Good morning. Welcome to the live in-person and Zoom worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Riverside. Thank you for joining us here in person, and thank you for joining us remotely by Zoom, where we will continue live streaming and posting these services on our YouTube channel for our virtual attendees. My name is Grace Preuss, a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate today. Other members of the worship committee you will hear include Alec Peck, who will be singing our hymns. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. Welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationship together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. Although our doors are open, the pandemic is not over. So while we are here, let's be careful and socially distance. We can speak in normal tones, but singing or chanting creates an increased risk of airborne exposure. So we ask you to refrain for the time being. We invite those of you in the sanctuary to sit back and enjoy listening to our hymns. For those of you at home, sing your hearts out. And now I invite you to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. For our call to worship, you are welcome to read with me the covenant of our church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our speaker today is Lauren Young. She's a fellow UUCR member, and she was born in southern Wisconsin, where Lauren learned her first lessons in acts of compassion by learning to be kind to animals. Her father was a dairy farmer, and her mother was an elementary school teacher. Educationally, she was among the last to attend a rural one-room school, 8 grades taught by one teacher, and later among the last to graduate from a hospital-based 3-year diploma school leading to a RN, registered nurse license. The event that led to her decision to become a nurse happened when she was 8 or 9 years old, when her father was admitted to the hospital for surgery. At that time, children under the age of 12 were not allowed to visit in a hospital. Her mother seated her in the waiting area and told her not to move. A nurse in full white uniform and cap greeted her warmly and handed her a children's book about nursing. Lauren believes this simple act of kindness and warmth inspired her decision to become a nurse more than the book itself. Spiritually, she was brought up Methodist, then the United Church of Christ, while at the same time, she was taught Unitarian principles and philosophy. Lauren's great uncle was a Unitarian minister and college chaplain at a liberal college in Ohio, which inspired both her mother's and her interest in Unitarianism. Stirrings of compassion. Today, we will focus on compassion, how it is learned, how it is taught, and how we are moved to acts of compassion. Since February is Black History Month, our speaker, Lauren Young, has chosen to share some of the lessons she learned about compassion in her childhood and teens against the backdrop of the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. We have 2 lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle. The second is the lighting of our, of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Today's reading of the Chalice lighting is When All the People by Mo Tse, number 601 in Singing the Living Tradition. When all the people of the world love, then the strong will not overpower the weak. The many will not oppress the few. The wealthy will not mock the poor. The honored will not disdain the humble. The cunning will not deceive the simple. Now we will pause for a moment of silence. We have a tradition here at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so I will now ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about our church. We ask you to step close to the mic here in the front and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. May I have a volunteer, someone? Audience? Is it Sandra? Thank you, Sandra. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Verhagen, and I've been a member for many years. I was here for a while, then I left and I started going to Montclair, but then I came back. I found this church by accident. I was looking for another speaker. I wandered in and I liked what they had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And that's how it's done. If you are new here, a visitor or an old friend, please raise your hand to stand and come up to the mic in front of the pulpit. Do we have any takers?
My name is Ariana, and I came here from a board member that was doing, I guess, selling candy or whatnot. And he told me about the church, and I became aware of this place being here from CMA, one of the NA type meetings that come here. Anyhow, I heard that. I believe the pastor there, the gentleman there, he spoke in, to me, it comes across religion in a way that you don't get anywhere else. So I'm very intrigued about Universal, this church, and what you guys believe in, especially since my Lord King Yeshua is definitely involved. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to introduce themselves?
Talo falava, everyone. My name is David Lutoni. I am a gay, Samoan, LGBTQ and HIV advocate. I am visiting here. I was invited by Grace and Robert, and I run a nonprofit organization called the Young Serving All Mankind, Aralofa, and we really work to serve Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, a heavily marginalized community within the Inland Empire. And yeah, happy to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome, David. Please come up.
Hi, my name is Lou, and I live here in Riverside. I'm here with my family, and we just wanted to listen to some words about social justice and our spiritual journey.
Welcome, Luke. Anyone else? For any other new guests, please please join us for coffee hour after the service. We'd love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you can also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you leave so that we know you are here, and leave your contact information if you want to know about upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. I'm sorry, Adam, I forgot to see if there was anyone online who wanted to introduce themselves. Okay, thank you. Now we have a few announcements we would like to share. During the service, we will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all of this information, and it is also available on our website. The COVID weekly announcement, or semi-weekly. So the current COVID news is as follows. As Riverside County's hospitalizations dramatically drop, the county will follow the state's lead this week last week, on eliminating the indoor face mask mandate for most people, but not all. Effective at 12:01 a.m., Wednesday, February 16th, masks will no longer be required in indoor spaces for fully vaccinated individuals in Riverside County, including the California Department of Public Health. Unvaccinated people will still need to mask, however. Unvaccinated people will still need to wear masks indoors, quote, Governor Gavin Newsom. Masks are recommended for everyone, regardless of vaccination status, in places of worship, according to state officials. If you need to make an appointment, please go to vaccine.ca.gov, or for more information and more options of vaccine locations, please go to covid19.ca.gov. Let's all take responsibility to protect ourselves and others, because we are all in this together. The first Sunday luncheon. Don't forget to join us next week after the service for the first Sunday luncheon. Next week, we will have the one pot meal. Our annual pledge drive for the 2022-2023 fiscal year has been rescheduled to begin on Saturday, March 26th, with a wine and cheese event from 4 to 6 p.m. All members and friends are invited. On March 19th, our dinner series will continue with a St. Patrick's Day themed meal. Tickets will go on sale this week and are pre-sale only. Camp Connect workshop. UU principals, how do they go beyond an ideal? Camp de Vanderbilt Pines invites you to a virtual experience called Camp Connect workshop. UU principals, how do they go beyond an ideal? This is a series of workshops that will be held at 5 p.m. on 4 consecutive Sundays in March, the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th. We will hear about an 8th principle that is currently under consideration. We will focus on 2 UU principles a week. The workshops will be presented via Zoom and facilitated by our camp dean and professional facilitator, Amy Brunel. UUCR will be streaming the service at the church if you wish to share the experience with fellow congregational attendees. Look in your email Tuesday for our bi-monthly newsletter. Our hymn now is Spirit of Life. If you are in the sanctuary, I invite you to sit back, close your eyes, and listen. Sharing our treasure. This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is on the church website and also in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. You get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage. Today is 50-50 Sunday, which is held on the fourth Sunday of the month. If you wish to donate to 50-50, half of each designated donation goes to the Young Samoa organization and half to the general fund. This is in addition to your pledge to the church. Please write 50-50 on the memo line of your check or on the envelope you find in the pews. Today, we welcome the Young Serving All Mankind, R. Alofa, AKA the Young Samoa organization. David Utuone, co-founder, CFO, and Maile Pogisa program director, will now tell us a little bit more about this nonprofit group and its mission. David?
Hi, everyone. So yes, I'm David Lutoni. I'm one of the co-founders and I'm one of the co-founders and the chief financial officer for Maile Pongisa. I'm sorry, for the Young Samoa. The Young Samoa stand for Serving All Mankind, Our Alofa. Alofa is the Samoan term for love. Our mission is to reach at-risk and disadvantaged youth and families within San Bernardino and Riverside counties through arts and alofa or love, while building better awareness and representation of Samoan culture within the Inland Empire communities we serve. And so a little bit of background about us. We actually started as a family group. We were just supporting other nonprofit organizations that were doing a lot around feeding our unhoused and houseless neighbors. And what we saw when we were engaging the community was that we were being mistaken a lot of times for our Asian community members. A lot of folks thought we were either Cambodian. And so we wanted to be intentional in our own name when we decided to establish ourselves as our own nonprofit. And we went with the Young Samoa, Samoa being land in the South Pacific that my family is native to. And so our programs really focus around, we have 4 established programs. It's our seasonal youth program, that every season we choose a topic and a theme, and we work with kids from ages K through 12. And we teach them, we really try to pass down ancestral knowledge about our language and just some of our cultural practices. And that's, it's open to all, not just Samoans or Pacific Islanders. And it's been really a treat to see some of our non-Pacific Islander participants just gain this understanding and respect of our ancestral knowledge and our ancestral practices, and that excite them to learn of their own and bring that to our programs and teach us about who they are and who their ancestors were. Our other program is Fire Knife Kitchen, which is our longest standing program. That is the program we use to hold free lunches and dinners for our unhoused and unsheltered neighbors, specifically more in San Bernardino County is where we focus that program. We go to places like Paris Hill Park and Succumbee Lake and hand out meals. It's been kind of a challenge Health department tends to give us a hard time, but we try to do it and then just quickly get out of there. The program that I direct is Mailipong Isa. Mailipong Isa is Psalm 1 for Out of the Darkness. I've been living with HIV since 2014, and that's really where it opened up my passion for health equity, specifically for Pacific Islanders. I came into contact with, well, first off, it was when I found out I was HIV positive. I didn't have any health insurance. I was working a temp job, and it was really hard to navigate the healthcare system and get myself access to affordable healthcare. And compounded onto that was just some really culturally insensitive healthcare providers. Some ones come from a collectivist culture. It's not always as easy as just prescribing one thing for me. I live in a multi-generational, multi-family home. And so a lot of times when healthcare providers make these suggestions about changing my diet or it's not just a decision I can make on my own. There's many mouths I feed. And so Mailipong Isa really focuses on linkage to affordable healthcare. We work to bring conversations out of the darkness to destigmatize talks of sexual health, of health and fitness. And a lot of that has been stigmatized within Psalm 1 Pacific Islander communities, largely in part to colonization. And so we really unpack that and try to address that. Our last program is Island Empire Performing Arts. That is a program, my niece, Monilove, is our director. That usually works in partnership with our youth programming. And so we teach the kids. We're based out of the Garcia Arts Center in San Bernardino City. And so we try to get them involved in different art workshops. We also teach them some of our dances, our Siva Samoa. It really ranges. We used to hold open mic nights across the street at the Life Arts Center. We were based there for a while. So anything arts related really falls under our Island Empire Performing Arts, or IEPA. But yeah, those are our 4 programs right now. We're slowly building. We're a humble group. We do what we can. But yeah, thank you so much for letting me speak. I left some of these brochures in the lobby in case you're interested with more information, but really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come and speak with you all today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, David. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity, and to those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? Our next hymn is From You I Receive. Please sit back quietly and enjoy.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Today's meditation is Let Us Be at Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh from Singing the Living Tradition, number 505. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to all of us and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. Amen. Now let us pause for a moment of silence. Now, I would like to introduce Lauren Young, who will be speaking to us on the topic Stirrings of Compassion. Lauren?
Good. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start here. I'm doing this very low tech today. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about what compassion is. For those of you who are not word people, just tune me out. But the word empathy comes from basically M means with and pathy means feelings. And compassion means the same thing. It's just kind of a different development of the words. I kind of lost my first page, but I can wing it, I think. Oh, no, here it is. Compassion, my first working title was empathy, which I've just kind of explained. And then it moved to compassion because that's a word that's more common in religious and philosophical traditions, including Sikhism, Judeo-Christian, humanism, Yuism, and many others. The word compassion sort of means to me, and also stirring of compassion means to me to have the feelings of empathy, but to also have the urge toward action. A little trouble with the light here, bear with me. What's that? Oh, okay. Yeah, he's going to come up, I think. Yeah. So I think the cute dog is next on the slide thing. We were looking actually for a picture of a dog that had a very obvious expression. This is quite as obvious as I wish it were. I mean, to me, it looks sort of like doubt. It looks like, what? You really think I think that? You think I'm going to buy that? But anyway, the old wisdom with dogs or with any pet was that having a pet teaches children responsibility. Well, a lot of parents that I've talked to say, no, it doesn't work. You know, you get the kids enjoy it for a while, they feed it regularly and all that kind of stuff, and then other things come up and they lose interest, and parents have an extra responsibility to deal in their already busy schedules. However, it is helpful to have a dog for a child or any kind of pet, in that they learn to become sensitive to the nonverbal communication of that animal. And just like learning a foreign language after you've learned your first language, if you learn from the animal, that can actually translate to learning the nonverbal language in other animals, including humans. So I always thought that was interesting. There's more and more research now being done on animal and human interaction, and there are even veterinarians that specialize in that. Yeah. Okay. And then finally we have the girl comforting the girl. Sometime after our family moved from the farm into a small town, my mother called me to come to the kitchen and had me look outside. And there were two young boys sitting there, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I happened to know because they were next door neighbors. And my mother said of the 4-year-old, he learned that from watching grown-ups, meaning he put his arm around the little boy. And I thought to myself, well, that's probably true, but he also probably learned it from experiencing that kind of empathy himself and wanting to share that with his younger brother. I remember my mother sitting me down one day. This is moving on to how I was learning compassion at the time of the movement, of the civil rights movement. My mother sitting me down one day and telling me that there were 2 things she needed to teach me that I was probably not going to learn in school. One was women's history and one was Black history. And that was probably true. And the next thing that happened was, first she started teaching me just one-on-one about these two histories. And you may wonder how they connect, but learning how the social movement for women worked really helps you understand a lot about how the civil rights movement works. Anyway, I would go to the library, and it was amazing to me that in an all-white community, they had so many books about Black history. And it dawned on me later on that I think my mother was talking to the librarian, because many years later, she would receive a plaque and her picture was on the front page of the newspaper when the library closed, and it was found out that she borrowed more books from the library than anybody else in the history of the library. Anyway, moving on. Somewhere around that time, in response to the Black movement, from about the age of about, let's say 8 to 10, something like that. I wasn't watching television because we didn't have one. And so I basically started watching, or beginning to watch, the movement at about the age of 10, which would have been about 57, 58, somewhere in there. And at first I can remember my mother sometimes pulling me away, because being an elementary teacher, I don't think the term was around then of age appropriate material. But she felt it was a little bit too strong for my young eyes, what was happening on the television. And then later on, not much later on, maybe a year or two, she would sit through all the entire news, and I would watch the news with her. But being very young, I was absolutely horrified and frightened at times. And here's where the Black history lessons came in. She would tell me the context. She would tell me the history of why this happened, why the white people were afraid of the Black people, even though the Black people were nonviolent, as well as their white volunteers that were with them. She also explained why the separate but equal doctrine was definitely not equal. And years later, one of my neighbors, who was a veteran of World War II, would talk about what it was like to go to the Southern schools before the integration happened. And he would talk about how, there are Black teachers who, even though they made about half of what the white teachers were paid, would somehow be able to find enough money to buy typewriters for the children. That, they had the only typewriters that existed, belonged to the teachers, and they would buy extra supplies and so forth. And recently I was talking to an African-American woman, and she said, yeah, it's still happening. I said, yeah, but the faces now are all different colors. Forgive me, I was writing some of this in the middle of the night after I lost a couple of pages and had to rewrite it. I remember feeling disgust and horror at the images on the television set. I did a lot of questioning. How can they do that to them? How can they do that just because of the color of their skin? On the other hand, I had great admiration and respect for the courage and the perseverance of the Black people and their white supporters. I also felt at this point that I was up there in Wisconsin, hundreds of miles away from the action or any danger. The first image I think that really drew me toward compassion was a demonstration where the all-white, of course, fire department turned the fire hoses onto the nonviolent resistors, who included teenagers and older elementary school-age children. My thoughts changed from they are doing that to them or to Black children to they are doing that to children. No adjectives necessary. They were near my age. This could happen to me. Then in 1963, three events happened which changed which became not only my loss of innocence, but for most people I knew. Mid-September 1963, the infamous bombing that killed 4 small girls at a Birmingham, Alabama church. Not long after that, I learned that the high school that I went to, which has an exchange program every year with kids from other states, we're going to have children from Birmingham, no, I don't know whether it was at Birmingham, but from Alabama were coming to visit us, and it would be coming in November. The reason they were coming in November was because they wanted to see snow. I learned about the same time that I don't know whether these are the children who were supposed to go down to Alabama later in the year, or if these are members of the student council, but some students had tried to get the administration to cancel the exchange program for that year. And they were told that no, all arrangements had already been made, that the kids were coming, and that we were to give them the hospitality that our particular county was famous for. We had a strong subculture that were Swiss German, and we are known for hospitality because, for one thing, there was a lot of tourism in our town related to the dairy industry and the cheese making industry. So they were coming. Anyway, the students arrived early in November, and according to the kids that I was talking to, I actually had very little contact with them. They had different classes. That they were starting to make demands like flying the Confederate flag on our flagpole at all the sports games. And that did not go over. They were told politely and firmly that that was not going to happen. And then on the 22nd of November, I was in the library studying with a friend of mine when the principal's voice came over the loudspeaker and said that President Kennedy had just been shot. And half an hour after that, that President Kennedy had died. It was quiet in the library, except for a few registers of shock. And then the bell rang for us to go to our next class. And we got out, and there were women who were young women, teenagers, who were audibly sobbing. And some of the men from our school had their heads hung low. And I didn't know whether this was respect for the president or whether they were trying to hide tears. I just don't know. But very shortly after that, we heard shouting and cheers. Cheers. And I looked around, and I know that I saw at least 2 of the Alabama kids were the ones cheering. And fortunately, it was on a Friday, because a bunch of us were going to go to the principal and ask them if they were supposed to come back the following week. We were going to tell them that we wanted them to go home. And but unfortunately, it was a Friday, and because of the assassination, we were let out an hour early and went home. And the students went home to their families to celebrate or to observe Thanksgiving. I felt disgusted, as I had before when I was watching television footage television footage from the South. You know, how dare they be celebrating when, you know, these girls were weeping. I felt as disgusted as I had been then. But I felt something new, fear. As I mentioned in my bio, Monroe, I'm sorry. And my mother and I began attending the new community, the new UU church that had just opened in the city of Monroe, which is where my high school was. We had a young minister with a wife and a small child. One Sunday in March of 1965, he announced that after the first attempted march from Selma to Montgomery, better known to history as Bloody Sunday, he had decided to join a group of clergymen to march from Selma to Montgomery later in that month. I felt fear again. The fear I felt that November, just 2 years before, was mostly irrational fear at that time. And intellectually, I knew we were probably on we had very little risk. But this was real fear. We had the footage we had all seen the footage from Bloody Sunday. And it seemed like they always put the clergy in the front. Yet I was also proud of him. I'm proud to be in his church. He was taking this risk for a very good cause. The march was mostly successful. Most of the marchers got to Montgomery. Most of the people who went to the first aid tents went there to get water or to have Band-Aids put on their feet. Very few serious injuries. And our missionaries came back home safe and sound to his young family and to his church family. And then the final slides are from the March on Washington, D.C. Yeah. So I think, are you, okay. Yeah, oh, okay, great, perfect. And let's see, time-wise, I think I'm gonna kind of wind up there because, yeah, okay. The first thing here I remember was John Lewis's speech. And he was just giving the first speech, and I was really moved by it. It actually was, I read later that it was actually a very controversial speech. The previous slide there is, I don't remember which demonstration it was from. Okay, I'm sorry we skipped it.
We've been looking at this behind you for a while.
Oh, okay, then let's move on to the last things. Yeah, let's just move on to the last two. This is John Lewis when he was very young. I thought he was actually younger than he was. I thought he was 18 or 19. He was actually 23 there, and a young seminarian student. And so he gave his controversial speech, and then this was Martin Luther King giving the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And I will end there.
Thank you, Lauren. Our closing hymn is "We Shall Overcome." Those in the sanctuary, please sit back, close your eyes, and listen quietly. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing your valuable time and insights with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. We're going to have about a 10 to 15-minute discussion with Lauren, where you may all share your comments and observations following the service. Please be aware that this will be included on the video that is posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for those words. I was noticing that our third principle has the word compassionate, justice, equity, and justice. Yes, but we were gonna start a weekly or monthly discussion group about how to implement our principles, how to implement our principles thank you, how to implement our principles in our own lives. And I was interested what you said about your mother teaching you. I don't think I got anything direct. I think after my mother was gone, when we would fight, we would like invoke her and fix it. But I don't think I don't know. So I want to give that some thought. I think it's really interesting that you got direct, example. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody who's interested in the group, please contact Linda Van Voorhees or myself, and we'll schedule it when everybody wants to. And if we have to do it on Zoom, we can. So thank you.
I have a question. I'd like to know if anybody else in the audience remembers any experiences from that time, any snapshots or observations that they may have felt during that time. I can't remember any. No. Does anyone else have any comments? Right. Thank you very much. Oh, Linda did. Okay.
Okay, in the late 60s, and this is a different kind of discrimination, but it's the same thing. In the late 60s, I was out with a friend. Her boyfriend was Hispanic, and he lived in a Hispanic neighborhood, and we had gone to the 7-Eleven there locally, and he had a very nice 57 shift. So we went in the store. My friend and I were sitting in the car, and all of a sudden, a bunch of black folks grabbed, I don't know what they grabbed, or how they had them, baseball bat, something. And while we were sitting in the car, they started smashing the windows. And I realized that this is a different kind or different perspective than the things that happen to the people in the South. But at the same time, just experiencing that kind of discrimination without having any difference of who it was, but experiencing extreme discrimination was extremely scary. We had no idea what would happen if they got in the car, were they going to hurt us? It was terrifying. So to be in any kind of violence like that, it's just a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. Thank you.